Shotguns in Warzone have had a pretty good variety when it comes to how useful they are. What I mean when I say that is that some are actually really amazing, and then some are on the opposite side of that and make us want to pull our hair out. When it comes to the Model 680, normally it falls on the latter side. Its slow fire rate and limited range in Warzone can make it really difficult to use, even at point blank ranges, which is kind of dumb. Even if you hit one shot up close, the time it takes to get the second off can really get you killed, and God forbid you miss more than one shot at any range with it. But it isn't all bad. Dragon's Breath is actually extremely good and is without a doubt the best way to run the Model 680. But after the recent damage buff to shotgun slugs, is that still the case? Are slugs on the 680 now a viable and good option to use in Warzone? Well, let's go ahead and dive into it and find out what I think. If you remember my video on the 725 in Warzone, the slugs could basically one-shot to the head at seemingly any range, and definitely at the ranges where you would normally be engaging with people anyway. I bet a lot of you are wondering if something like that is still possible with the 680, and sadly, no it isn't. And you can see why when we look at the damage profile and the ranges. But right before we get into it though, I wanted to mention that these values are all hand tested and measured in my photo editor by pixel basically, so they may be slightly off and not exact, but they should be very close to the actual value. Also, I use this in Plunder, so people spawn with only 2 armor plates, so it seems like I get a lot of one-shot kills. It's not always against a fully armored player, so that's just something to keep in mind when you see the highlights from when I played with it. Onto the 680 again. So here are the damage ranges and the values, and as you can see, you can only one-shot a fully armored player in the head up to about 2.6 meters with no attachments, and that is just really dumb. That is not strong at all. After that, it will always be 2 shots to the head. Thankfully, the chest can still deal a good bit of damage as well, and up to around 41 meters, it should be about 2 chest shots to kill, but the moment you hit below chest, like stomach or something, it's gonna take at least another shot. So just like with all of these slug rounds on the other shotguns, you need to aim high and go for chest and head shots, which is of course easier said than done. So if you hit your shots torso and up, and you're within that 41 meters range, it'll usually take from 2 to 3 shots to kill. This is basically similar to the base buckshot version of the 680, but of course that range buff from slugs you get is really huge, with the trade-off that you have to aim down sights and be extremely accurate. The necessity for accuracy makes using this gun at closer ranges really difficult because people will likely be jumping around and spraying with an AR and SMG. The nice thing about these damage values though is that if anyone has any bit of health missing, or they are missing 1 armor plate, headshots can kill in one shot up to about 28 meters or so. Just whatever you do not hit the legs. That is just a recipe for disaster, and you will 100% get killed if you do. So damage wise, slugs aren't that bad, but yeah, they're kind of weak in a lot of ways for this particular shotgun. Definitely better than before, but using them you might find that they are a bit lackluster at times, mostly because of that lack of a good one-shot headshot range. Personally, I think it needs to be way longer than just 2.6 meters. That's kind of an asinine range for that. If you're going to use something like slugs, especially on the 680 with its slow fire rate, you should be rewarded for hitting heads at further distances. I mean, 2.6 is just way too small. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the attachments and see just how much range we can really get with this bad boy. Taking a look at this list, out of all of the attachments, the Marauder Suppressor is actually the best attachment when it comes to increasing range on its own. The Sport Barrel is what you would probably assume to have the highest range, but nope, the Marauder actually takes the cake here with a 27% increase in range. Combining it with another barrel would be a good idea in most cases, but really, you don't have to, considering the bonuses aren't that much better when they're stacked. I recommend running the Liberator over the Sport Barrel generally. The Sport and the Marauder both decrease movement speed and make aiming down sights extremely slow, so if I had to pick one, I would use the Liberator barrel because you're going to get overall quicker mobility and still get a really good range bonus. It's not quite as much as the Sport, but it's actually pretty darn close. Also with the 680, it has a unique ammo attachment that gives you a 6-round slug mag with a bonus to your aim down sight speed at the cost of movement speed. So if you don't mind being a bit slower movement wise, but you want a faster aim down sights time, the 6-round mag is actually a pretty decent choice, and it looks badass too. Just try to stay away from the swap barrel as it can really mess with your range and consistency. As you already know, slugs in Modern Warfare are not pinpoint accurate, and I know most guns aren't that way in this game. The bullets don't always travel in the exact spot each time, but the degree of spread on slugs is much more pronounced. In order to help with this, you can use the larger barrels as well as the choke in order to really mitigate the amount of that spread and make it to where you can expect to hit your targets more on point from further away. Judging from this picture, the spreads aren't really that bad, and they used to be much worse months ago before any buffs to slugs. The choke is the most useful attachment when it comes to reducing overall random spread, but it really isn't that necessary I found at the distances that I've been using this gun. The Marauder says it tightens spread, but it really doesn't have much of an effect, and it seemed like it made it kind of a little bit worse. Either way, this attachment gets an awesome range boost, but doesn't help much with the spread. The Liberator and Sport Barrel are basically on par with each other as well. Overall, you can probably get away with most setups, but if you want the most pinpoint accuracy, the choke is for you. But again, it isn't really necessary I found in my opinion, but it really does help. When it comes to what range you should be using this gun, you're gonna have to stick to medium ranges. Do not go for crazy snipes, but rather use this as a great value or a Walmart brand marksman rifle, if you will, that underperforms compared to the other rifles. When it comes to muzzle velocity, slugs on this gun are basically the same as the others from what I can tell, and at ranges you'll notice that slugs have a slower muzzle velocity than most other ammo types, and it's going to make leading your targets at longer distances a good pain in the butt. Now, none of the barrels really made any changes to this, but again, as if bugged, the larger barrels seem to make the slug take longer to hit the target for some reason, but not really by much. We're talking like 3 frames. It isn't going to really affect gameplay that much, but it's just something to note. So now that we've seen the damage and the potential this gun has, is it worth running at all? Is it even good? Well, yeah, it's okay. It's not great though. If you're playing Plunder, it's totally fine because you just keep respawning. It isn't ideal, and you're always better off with an actual sniper or marksman rifle because of that lack of damage the slugs have on this gun, and of course in the 680's case, the slow fire rate. When it comes to Warzone though, if you're going to be using this as a primary, you are basically handicapping yourself to the extreme. As a sidearm, it can be okay, but there is no real value in using it when everything else seems to be so much better at both close range and long range. Again, I'm not saying it's inherently bad, but in Warzone, you have to play so smart and your guns have to be able to work consistently and well enough, and slugs on the 680 are just too difficult to use well. And even when they function, they don't function that great either, which is kind of disappointing. Remember, we have to deal with slower muzzle velocity, steep bullet drop that begins around 80 meters or so, which makes this similar to using a crossbow, slug inaccuracies where they don't always go where you aim, and the fact that aiming down sights is basically essential to using them. It's a difficult setup, and if you want to try them, I suggest it in Plunder first to get a real feel for them. In Warzone, only use them if you want the challenge, or if you want to go for some crazy funny Reddit trick shots at super long ranges, which is incredibly difficult to do. With the 725, you have some great advantages to using it over buckshot with that amazing headshot and upper chest potential, but on the 680, I'd say it's basically on par with the buckshot version of the gun and definitely not better than the Dragon's Breath on the 680. That's just my opinion on it, of course, although slugs on this gun are hella fun when they work, so that is something nice that it has going for it. When it comes to my best class setup, I often went with the 6-round mag for a better aim down sights time than the base barrel, and then I used the Marauder suppressor, the no stock attachment, the XRK grip, and then either the tac laser or the 5mW laser. If you know my content, you'll know that the 5mW is almost always a crutch attachment for me. I don't use it for hip firing, it's for the sprint out time. And no matter how fast you can aim down sights, if you are running around and get caught, a fast sprint out time with a moderately fast aim down sights time is better in my opinion than a really fast aim down sights time with a really crappy sprint out time. So you can choose whichever laser you prefer. Since it is accuracy based, you may be better off with the tac laser since it helps aim down sights time and stability, but it's all preference. This gun overall is not easy to work with. While it can be rewarding for players with good accuracy, in the end, you're still better off with a lot of different weapons. This is a very niche setup, and I think it's good for breaking the monotony of the game, and for good players, it's a good challenge to try and use it. In Warzone, I can't really recommend it as a serious contender for a primary weapon, but in Plunder, go ahead and run it and try to get some headshots. Aiming high really is the key with these things, and if you do, you may be surprised how much fun it can actually be if you manage some good shots. But so far, the 725 is still the best slug shotgun in my opinion, followed by the Origin 12 and then this one. The gun with slugs is not very good. It's just way too difficult to work with, and that headshot one-shot kill range needs to be extended way more than what it currently is. And that is just about going to do it for this video, everyone. So let me know in the comments below, what do you think of the 680 with slugs? Do you think it's absolutely terrible, or do you think they're in a pretty good spot now? I'll be having the rest of the shotgun slug guides for Warzone coming soon, and you can bet that with the Black Ops Cold War beta, I will be having some videos about that as well. So if you like Call of Duty content, gun guides, and shotgun content, be sure to subscribe for more, and I will see you guys in the next video.